manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Thank you, happy.
I welcome you to A Captain's Log, the Star Trek talk show dedicated to exclusive interviews with actors, writers, producers, authors, and stunt women like Leslie Hoffman. Thank you for joining us. Lili is here. I'm Brian Kreutz as well. And we have a one-of-a-kind interview today with a Deep Space Nine and Voyager stunt superstar, Leslie Hoffman.
Leslie Hoffman, yes. Leslie was very influential in Star Trek. Okay, BK, what do we have in store for the latest Trek news?
We have a really quick news segment. If you all remember the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Trials and Tribulations, they used what they call a GUMP technology. And what this does, it allows them to use technology, for example, in this one from the 1960s episode, Trouble with Tribbles. They merged it with Worf and O'Brien and Siddig El-Fadil playing Dr. Bashir. Remember sitting in that bar sequence where they had the big Klingon brawl and Klingon fight? Well, that actually was merged with footage from 1960 Star Trek into today's Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode. They called it Trials and Tribulations. Well, that was a first for Star Trek. We have another first. Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated series, has two characters, animated characters, that are going to cross over as live action characters into Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And we have seen a sneak peek of this episode, and it is fabulous. You won't want to miss it. Coming up on Thursday on Paramount Plus.
And we'll have our interview with Leslie Hoffman coming up after this.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to your Star Trek source for news and interviews here on A Captain's Log. We are honored to have Leslie Hoffman with us here today. Check out these facts about Leslie.
One of the most recognizable films that I was in was the 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street, where I actually played the role of the Harl guard and actually got to speak. They hired me because I could act and do the stunt. Wes Craven, who was the director, was probably one of the nicest directors that I ever worked for.
Let's continue to talk about Time's Orphan. When Miles arrives in the cavern Molly was playing in, that he finds his daughter Molly hanging from a cliff over a vortex. Leslie, discussed being on the cliff edge, really, with Molly. It was really a dangerous situation. Leslie, you had to brush Hana Hatae's hair instead of a hairdresser walking all the way out, and there really wasn't room for safety.
Hairdressers and costumers, everybody's on the set. The problem was I would have had to stop safetying Hannah back off of the cliff to allow the hairdresser to crawl out on the cliff to brush Hannah's hair. If I remember correctly, I don't think the hairdresser was that fond of heights. Now, the problem is, in Los Angeles especially, you have unions for everything. So I belong to the Screen Actors Guild, and Screen Actors Guild isn't supposed to be touching other people's hair or costumes or whatever. So there was actually, as opposed to saying waiting, there was a big discussion. Well, could the hairdresser just hand the hairbrush to Leslie? That way she could keep safetying Hannah, Molly, and brush her hair, have the hairdresser tell Leslie what to do. And then we could, do the shot again. And, there's always several takes. Very, very rarely is something done in one take.
Wow.
That's impressive.
After much discussion and what would the union say if they found out that, you know, the stunt woman brushed her hair, and they just decided that as long as the hairdresser was giving me instructions on how to, this hair needs to get flattened down or something like that. And nobody reported it to a union, and there was no problems, and we just got the scene done. And Molly was, like you say, I was with Molly or Hannah all the time, so she was safetied. And I'm sure the hairdresser appreciated not having to crawl out on the edge of the cliff. They had to do the fall where Molly actually falls off the cliff. There was dialogue before, I guess, she fell off the cliff. So on a different day, they built like the edge of the cliff vertically, which Molly Hannah was holding on to. I was hiding behind it, where camera couldn't see me. I was holding on to Hannah's hands before they yelled action. And she was on wires. She was wearing a belt and on piano wires, and she had to swing across the soundstage, which then Dan Curry would have made the effects of her falling into the vortex. And Tom Morga was on the other end, that as Hannah reached the end of the so-called fall, he would grab her that she wouldn't, swing back into the middle. She wouldn't come to center. And we practiced the first time, and you should have seen Hannah's eyes. They got this big when I let go of her and she let go of the cliff. But then she realized that it was a lot of fun, and they got the shot that was needed. We filmed it several times, and Hannah wanted, I want to do some more. I want to say some more.
Molly!
Molly? Molly!
Molly, I'm coming!
Daddy!
Hold on, Molly, hold on. Daddy's coming. Come on.
Daddy, help!
Take my hand. Come on, just take my hand.
Leslie, you were the stunt double for B'Elanna Torres on Star Trek Voyager for a strong female Klingon character. What was it like working closely with Roxann Dawson?
We didn't really have that much contact, but she was really nice anytime that we saw each other. It was more doubling the half Klingon that was fun for me, because if you really watch the episodes of Star Trek, of all the Star Treks, well, now the ones that are up in Canada, women can fight, but back even in the 90s, human women could not throw a punch. Producers or somebody decided that human women would not fight. Would, like I say, they might take a gun, a pipe, a rifle, and hit somebody with it, but they could not throw a punch at somebody. But if you were an alien woman, like Dax, like Kira, like Torres, you could be as strong as a man, and you could throw a punch. So being Torres, it was so much fun, because I wasn't fighting with another woman. I usually was fighting with a man.
I love Torres so much. She's my
Absolutely.
favorite.
So many moments with you doubling for the character of B'Elanna Torres. Leslie, can you please briefly talk about your favorite memory or maybe a never before heard story from your perspective doing stunts on Voyager over at Paramount?
Doubling Torres on Day of Honor probably is one of my favorite moments because at that point, Roxann was about 10 weeks pregnant and the studio didn't even want to intercut her. When we do a fight, usually you intercut the stunt and, well, you do the stunt, but then you have the actress, you know, you do face shots of the actress and she might be throwing a punch or something like that, and then you intercut it all together. If you watch Blood Fever, you can see where, well, at least for me, I can see where it's me and I can see where it's Roxann.
I'm leaving.
Not until you have completed the ceremony, Pixar.
Welcome back, Trekkies. We're here with Leslie Hoffman, an extraordinary career she's had. She's going to tell us more stories from the stunt side of Star Trek. Leslie, talk about the Star Trek Voyager episode Day of Honor. This is a really good B'Elanna Torres episode where she is basically getting hit with Klingon pain sticks. And she's in the holodeck with a bunch of holographic Klingons. Tom Morga plays one of them. But you are doubling Roxann Dawson because she's several months pregnant, and you do a couple flips over your shoulder even with the holographic Klingon characters. I understand Jesus Salvador Trevino was the director, and you caught him at the right moment to show your rehearsal with you and Tom Morga. Tell us about this.
And as you said, it was before the filming. Tom and I choreographed the fight, and one of the moves that we did was he flipped me to my stomach, which is really not done. Usually when someone gets tossed, they end up on their back. But like I say, I ended up on my stomach, or you know, that's the way we choreographed it. Anyways, the director comes over and he wants to see the fight. And we go through the fight, and the director loves it. I mean, he doesn't want to change it at all. Well, or I shouldn't say he doesn't want to change it at all. He doesn't really want to change it at all, except Tom says to him, well, we could do the fall this way, and he takes me and throws me to the floor. Or we could do it this way, and he takes me and throws me to the floor. Or we could do it this way, and he takes me and throws me to the floor. And you know, the director said, no, I like, let's say he said the second thing. And Tom goes, oh, you mean this one? And he takes me and he throws me to the floor again. I think they supposedly touch her with the pain stick maybe 3 times. And so when they put me in to be the double, it picks up on the third touch where I don't know, like I said, I'd have to see the clip again. Is that whether she knocked it out of the way or Tom comes in after her? Yeah, I mean, basically when you see the third or the last pain stick, again, if you have really good eyes, you can see that I'm the double and the fight takes off from there. And again, until the camera is looking at Tom on the ground and then swings back and here's Roxann again.
You wear a custom single-piece uniform in Voyager in order to perform the stunts for B'Elanna Torres. So this had to be a challenge, as you know, the hair sticks to your face in fight scenes and all of that. So can you tell us about that, Leslie?
We actually filmed the fight 3 different times, but we had to stop the 2 first times because I don't remember which happened first, but I punched Tom and he's supposed to get up and, you know, the fight's supposed to continue, except that he's not standing up and I'm wondering where he is. And he's kneeling on his Klingon hair. He had a very long hairpiece on that day. I mean, well, all the Klingon wigs are long, but this one seemed to be extra long. Anyways, so that shot was no good because, like I say, he couldn't stand up. So then we film it a second time, and it's where Tom throws me onto my stomach, and he starts stepping towards me, and those big Klingon boots, he kicked a bunch of this diatomaceous earth into my face, and that stuff is poisonous. You're not supposed to breathe it or eat it, or I mean, not that someone's going to sit there and eat it, but I mean, again, it's poisonous, and you got to be very careful with it. But so not only that, also. Your makeup is, even though they powder you down, your makeup is very sticky. So here I had a face full of dirt. I had my wig stuck across my face. So they had to stop the cameras, and I stood up, and I'm trying to not eat the dirt. I'm saying, can you get a cup of water and another cup that I can spit into? And the hairdresser gets the hair off of my face, and then they're trying to clean my face up with this dirt. And I mean, like I say, he kicked a lot of dirt into my mouth, actually. I mean, I just remember taking water and swishing it around and spitting it out, and I still had dirt in my mouth. And but again, things happen, and we, what you would call, reset, and we did it a third time, and it went perfectly, and that's what you see in the episode.
Leslie, were you a Star Trek fan of the original 1960s series, watching Captain Kirk and Spock before working on Star Trek?
From a teen Trekkie, I went to the second Star Trek convention in New York City, and I sent you a picture of me with George Takei from that convention. I mean, again, who would have thought this girl? I took a bus down from Saranac Lake to New York City. And another thing is, I entered a trivia contest, and I came in third. And I mean, the place was packed. So I'm pretty impressed that I came in third. I mean, I love Star Trek. I mean, it gave people hope in the 60s. And the eventual series afterwards just tried to, I mean, we should all work together.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Leslie, we also asked Tom Morga this question in an interview a couple weeks back. So you did a fight choreography sequence before taping right in front of the director, Jesus Salvador Trevino, to show him the action with blocking and the Klingon pain sticks. And you're in this scene with Tom Morga doubling for Torres for the Voyager episode Day of Honor. Can you tell us this story?
Back to Day of Honor, being 10 weeks pregnant, they wouldn't let her even near doing a stunt. You see, the last time that Torres gets touched by a pain stick, and then it goes into the fight, and that's me all the way through. Now, it was filmed with what they call a steady cam. The last punch was Tom going to the ground, and they have the camera looking at Tom. Roxann steps in, the camera swings, and here's Roxann, as Torres saying, I've had enough, or whatever she said, and she leaves. And it just looks like she must have done the fight because it's all, again, there are no cuts after that last pain stick.
Leslie, you were in a lot of makeup as a Cardassian and as a Bajoran alien. Can you talk about the Vedic Yasim jump as a Bajoran?
The Vedic Yasim was protesting that they were going to give the DS9 back to the Cardassians. And I don't know, there are these lines that just kind of burn in your head. And I just remember Lillian, that's the actress who was playing Vedic Yasim, goes, "Evil must be opposed." Anyways, and then she jumps, and the problem is that she was hanging herself. So when you do a high fall, you normally fall to your back. But in hanging yourself, I had to do a straight drop to my feet. So they build a special catcher to that, where there's the pad that's on the ground, but then they put boxes on top of the pad that your legs go through the box, and you land that way. Because if you were to land on something absolutely solid, you'd either break your legs or you'd run your knees into your face or something like that. I mean, well, I just want to say to me, it's more dangerous than a normal high fall. I mean, you really got to know what you're doing, and you really got to set up for the stunt that you're doing.
Anything yet?
Not yet. There are 2 Vedeks inside, but we've seen no indication they intend to leave the shrine.
What about Yazim?
She hasn't shown up.
Let's hope she doesn't. Last thing I want to do is start arresting Bajorn civilians here on the promenade. Don't think there's going to be any story here for you today, Jake.
You sure? I got a message from Betty Yazim saying the protest was starting at exactly 1400.
Oh, it certainly doesn't look like
What's she doing? Evil must be opposed.
Leslie, the alien in the swarm is a really interesting one, but because of the torn wardrobe and latex issues, producers didn't want to write this character any longer, and it was removed from the story arc. Can you speak to this?
Each season, they wanted a new bad guy, and they came up with this character called the Swarm. Most of this bad guy was like a foam rubber, and the problem is that you hit the corner or the edge of anything, and this costume just ripped. It just, tore apart, and they realized that it would be way too expensive to have this character. So where Swarm was supposed to be the bad guy for the season, it only ended up as 1 episode.
Leslie, you were the first stunt woman elected to the SAG Board of Directors. Then you also served as chair of the National Stunt and Safety Committee and co-chair to the Young Performers Committee. What made you want to take on the responsibility of being on this board?
When I decided to run for the board of directors of the Screen Actors Guild, everyone had to go before the nominated committee and was asked several questions. In my case, it was, we realize that you want to be on the Stunt and Safety Committee, but what other committee would you like to serve on? And I thought for a moment, and I said the Young Performers Committee, because I felt the children needed to be protected as well as the adult actors. 2 weeks after was the Twilight Zone movie accident where Vic Morrow and 2 young children were killed by a helicopter that was knocked out of the sky by debris going up into its rotors. I am assuming that is one of the reasons that I did get nominated and elected to the board of directors. After Ed Asner, Patty Duke was elected president of the Screen Actors Guild. I was given a certificate of appreciation for all the work that I had done, being on the National Stunt and Safety Committee and being on the Young Performers Committee. Also, I had been sent up to Sacramento to talk about the Twilight Zone incident, and I'd also been sent down to Arizona to talk to the local branch about stunt and safety. So it was just their way of showing appreciation.
High praise and appreciation to you indeed. Leslie, talk about the differences on a high level between the TV and film industries, and please give a shout out to someone who recognized you in their book or an article, please.
This industry has 2 different academies. There is the Motion Picture Academy, which covers strictly movies and its various categories and awards people the Oscar. There's also the Television Academy, which is strictly television shows, awards the Emmys, and covers various categories. Years ago, there was a woman named Molly Gregory who was a writer, and she was very interested in my concern about safety, and she wrote about me and other women. But she wrote about me in 2 different books, one being Women Who Run the Show was her first book that I was mentioned in, and the second book that I was mentioned in was called Stuntwoman, The Untold Hollywood Story. Anyway, she had gotten in contact with the Television Academy, who does interviews and archives these interviews into their library, and she felt that there should be a history of stuntwomen. So I received a call from the Television Academy asking if I would like to be interviewed, which I said yes to. Talked about the industry, stunts, women. If you go to the archive, the library at the Television Academy, you can find my interview there.
Leslie, talk about doubling for Roxann Dawson, particularly in the episode Extreme Risk.
Doubling Roxann Dawson, the Voyager episode Extreme Risk, was actually kind of tricky because the fall itself was only about 3 feet, but the costume she was wearing had a protruding helmet coming out the front of her, and on her back there was this backpack. So you couldn't fall into the pad on your stomach, and you couldn't really fall into the pad on your back. It was Tom who actually came up with the solution, is that we staggered the pad I was falling into.
Leslie, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I want to ask you directly for our fans to enjoy. So who is the second greatest stuntman of all time?
I have a sneaking suspicion that number 1 for Dennis is Paul Stader. And so when he says who's number 2, Dennis was amazing.
Leslie Hoffman, it has been a fun-filled half hour and well worth the time with your masterpiece of stories. I know Lily and I will treasure this time you spent with us here on A Captain's Log. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
BK, next week we'll have even more in store from 6 different stuntmen that Leslie's worked with all together for the first time since the 1990s on the Star Trek spin-off series. This is exclusively found here on A Captain's Log, so please remote record or watch us on your local TV stations or Roku channel and on our YouTube channel.
Yes, I can't wait to kick off this 2-part stuntman story with never-before-seen footage and pictures behind the scenes of the stunts and rigs. It'll be starting next week. This is a story our producer Dustin Serrano has been working hard to arrange for us. We'll see you next week, and bye for now.
Bye.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happiness.